different shapes and sizes, and from all parts of the country, and from lots and lots of different eras. And we're going to start by going to the interwar years, 1935, for this Bedford van. Got that very much pre-war look, as it was always called, with the sort of the sit-up and beg wheel arches over the front wheels. Lovely restored condition. It's a Bedford van, the sort of thing which would have been used by removal companies, lights, deliveries and so on. So a larger version of the white man van of today. 1935, Bedford van, owned by the Day family from Ryde here on the island. And I said a moment or two ago that commercial vehicles come in all different shapes and sizes. Well, here's something very different. It dates from 1941. It's a Scammell Pioneer tractor unit. You're looking at it and go, that's not a tractor. No, but a tractor actually simply means it is a vehicle with tractive effort. The term tractor has rather been adopted for farm machinery, but tractors can be steam vehicles, can be diesel vehicles, they can be lorries, and they can be farm tractors. Now, a little later on, you're going to see some of the giants of steam. Steam reigned supreme pretty much for the first 30 or 40 years of the last century, and then from the 1940s, diesel power started to take over. I mean, steam lasted into the 60s and 70s, but it was diesel that was really picking up. And powerful diesel engines like this Scammell Pioneer's van, 400E, it's a 1500 weight panel van. Island registered vehicle. It has the DL number plate, which delineates the Isle of Wight lettering until all the systems changed about 25 years ago. It was actually bought for a newsagent in West Cowes here on the island, was latterly used at a small holding and fruit farm in the Ninwood area of West Wight. A huge number of these sorts of vans were similar sort of use in the 1950s and 60s, a small pickup, Morris J type tipper van, and this is owned by Ray Herretts from Stafford in Staffordshire. Restored by them about 5 years ago, was originally supplied new to Stafford County Council as a small runabout tipper van. 1958, Morris J type, owned by Ray Herretts. It's owned by Brian and Claire Gardner from Harefield in Middlesex. Originally used as a flatbed lorry by Tetley Brewery. They would have used it as a brewer's dray and for transporting items around the brewery site and then out on deliveries. 1980, Ford D-Series Chinese 6, owned by Brian and Claire Gardner from Harefield in Middlesex. The 1970 Bedmat KM500 timber tractor. With a crane unit on the back, it would be used for hauling up logs, loading them up onto wagons and so on, and then this particular vehicle would haul loads of logs out of forestry areas to get them clear of the woodland, ready for onward transport to the sawmills. Started life as a tipping lorry and was then converted to a timber tractor. Got ground anchors, which means it can dig in to be absolutely stable and solid when the crane is being used. 1970, Bedmat KM500 timber tractor, owned by Stephen and Valerie Court from Godalming in Surrey. Again, with these sorts of vehicles, very often the base vehicle is the chassis and the running gear and the cab. With a lot of these sorts of vehicles, they'll change what's on the rear, and this actually started life with the army as a fuel tanker. They had a tanker body on the back and was later converted, probably when it was sold off from military service, to a farmer or a forester, and was used for timber haulage. So 1967 Bedford, it's a 4x4 Surrey, originally used by East Sussex Fire Services. It's a drop side lorry, which simply means that the sides of the rear part drop down for easy loading. You go, why would the fire service have had a vehicle like that? Well, you always think of the fire services with their fire engines, and that's it, that's all they do. But of course the fire service is a fire and a rescue service, so often they needed other materials to get to site, and East Sussex Fire Brigade used this vehicle for many years as part of their rescue work. 1978, Bedford TK, owned by Jim East from Surrey. Dealers here on the Isle of Wight before being taken over by Premier Ford in Newport, and they sold it as a basic small lorry with cab, chassis, running gear, and the body was built by Margins in Newport, and it was used as a general tipper for work by the County Council on road building. The hut on the back is an original site hut. I wonder how many of you, perhaps of an older generation, can remember seeing that sort of hut where workmen working on the roads would park that alongside the site they were working on, and the hut was used for keeping tools in and also for their tea breaks. Say Thames ET6, originally supplied new to the Isle of Wight County Council in May 1954, now owned by Ian Rand. As you've heard me say, this show has now been running for 50 years. Now this vehicle hasn't been to all of them, but it first came here in 1982 and has been to everyone since, so it's a regular exhibitor here at the Island Theme Fair. But it was new in 1951 to a timber merchant in Maidenhead in Berkshire, and used by them as a flatbed lorry on timber deliveries in the van. Again, for the period, produced in relatively large numbers, this was originally supplied new to IOW White of Chichester in West Sussex, and they used it for moving empty coffins. After a busy life as a working vehicle, it entered preservation in the 1950s and was originally in a museum, but was then sold off and came into private ownership of Matthew Harris from Herefordshire. 1928, Morris Commercial LT van, originally used in the Chichester area. The 1916 Dennis N-type fire engine. Now this particular vehicle, it all looks resplendent and lovely, although it is getting a bit dusty and all the dust around the showground today. But this is an original 1960 fire engine supplied new to the London Fire Brigade, and had a busy working life of them for about 15 years until the early 1930s. Now, often when we think... First one dates from 1972. It's a Rover P5B, bought by the current owner a couple of years ago, and it was originally new in 1972, and was served the Queen's Royal Household until 1976. So served the Queen as part of her fleet of transport in the early 70s. 1972, Rover P5B, that's owned by Peter Bird from Wootton Bridge here on the island. Lovely little sports car from the late 60s, a Triumph TR5 Sport owned by Dave Carter, just about to come in front of the commentary position. One of only 1,161 UK right-hand drive cars to be built. When new, that was 1,261 pounds in 1968. Top speed, 120 miles per hour. 1968, Triumph TR5 Sport owned by David Carter from Merston. How many of you remember this next type of car coming in? Ford Cortina. Very popular car of the late 60s and early 70s. It's a Mark II 1600 Cortina, hugely popular at the time. Built in Dagenham in June 1917, registered first of all in Southampton, came into the island just over 50 years ago, has been here ever since. 1970, Ford 1600 Cortina, owned by Richard Jenkins from Ashley here on the island. Just coming round in front of the commentary position now, we go back a lot further to 1924. What's that? 101 years old to the Ford Model T. And that's followed on behind, just coming in front of the commentary position. A more modern sports car, Triumph Stag, dating from 1972. Again, a hugely popular car of the 1970s. owned by Ralph Candy from Eastleigh in Hampshire. He's had it for 3540 car. Ford Escort. Ford Escort Mark II. Hugely popular car of the late 70s and early 80s. That's one of the souped-up versions. Quite a Ford Escort. 1952 vintage is MGTD. Purchased new by a family friend of the current owners, with the original owner for 64 years, and was used in the US in 1916. It was purchased by the Island registered vehicle coming around in front of the commentary position. Got the DL number plate, which used to be the letters delineating it as an Island registered car. Dates from 1961, a Vauxhall Cresta PA. First registered in 61, got a 2.6 litre engine, and was stocked up. Who remembers the Moggy Minor? I learned to drive on one of these. Well, sort of one of these. Mine was a Morris Minor Traveller. And here it is, just coming around in front of the commentary position. It's travelled all over the place, and a couple of years ago did 3,300 miles across France, Italy and Switzerland, over mountains and through valleys and passes, and the Morris convertible without any breakdown. So lovely looking vehicle, and it's owned by Tim Lang. Interesting little vehicle coming round in front of the commentary position. Listen to this as it goes round, because you can't hear anything. We go on about electric cars these days, and they're all the fads, and everybody thinks we need to go electric. And of course, that's a matter of opinion. That one in the 70s and 80s. That one dates from 1982. It's an Enfield electric, owned by the Day Collection from Ride. Another Moggy Minor just coming around in front of the commentary position. 1957 Morris Minor 1000. Moggy Minors, hugely popular cars. Go back to the interwar years now, to 1931, to the Singer Junior coming up in front of the rather the top side of the arena. Very much a traditional look to the interwar years. That's owned by Kirsty Patterson, a 1931 Singer Junior. Owned by Carolyn Brading from Whitwell here on the island. Built in 1925 as a van, but sold to a gentleman in West Wales for delivering groceries. A 1925 Austin Heavy 12. Built just before the Second World War, 1938 Austin 10x4 Special. Owned by Mike Gilman from Surrey, from Hawley in Surrey. Had it in their family since the 1960s, when it was bought as scrap for £4. The 1938 Austin 10x4 Special, owned by Mike Gilman. Ford Pop, which is owned by Mike Griss from Newport here on the island. It's an original Isle of Wight vehicle, never touched, pretty much in original condition, and only 33,000 miles from new. Originally bought from the Ford dealer Frank Cheverton's of Newport before they were taken over by Premier. Well, we're really going back in time now. One of the oldest vehicles we have with us at Hayden Street this weekend, 110 years old, a 1915 Model T Ford Speedster, sold for auction in America some years ago, and was secured for import back into the UK, but originally a 1915 Ford Model T Speedster, now owned by Stephen Edwards from Yarmouth. Cars come in all shapes and sizes. They also have different forms of propulsion. And right at the beginning of the last century, they were steam cars. So a lovely little locomobile, Style 2 steam car, dates from 1901. So earlier on, when I said the 1903 agricultural engine was the oldest steam vehicle we got this weekend, it's actually this one, 1901. It's a 1956 Land Rover Series 1 short wheelbase vehicle, owned by Steve Castle from Bryston here on the island. Not a lot is known of the history, but it's a late example of the Series 1 Land Rover, a classic British mark, and another short wheelbase Land Rover just coming around in front of the commentary position. Series 1, a wee bit earlier, 1952 vehicle owned by Hazel Smith from Kensing in Kent. The standard 80-inch Series 1, and it's owned by Hazel Smith from Kensing, 1952 Land Rover. And that was followed around, I believe, by a 1925 and a 1926 Vauxhall Princeton Tourer, owned by Ed Day from right here on the island. 3,500 of these were produced from 1922 to 1927, and in the middle of that production run, the LM version appeared with a higher compression engine and 4-speed gearbox. 1926 Vauxhall Princeton Tourer, owned by Ed Day from Rye. And one of them is just coming around in front of the commentary position. It's a 1933 Ford Model 9. This was with us 50 years in this show arena when it was a very much smaller affair. It's Ford's answer to the Austin 7, although this is a top-end model. 1933 Ford Model 9. Just coming around now is a selection of Toylanders. Lovely little vehicles. You may have seen some of them earlier on. These are largely battery-operated vehicles, and what they do is they give an opportunity for some of the youngsters, the children of many of the exhibitors, when they're just kicking around going, "Oh, Dad, can we play? Mum, can we do something?" Well, lots of parents and grandparents have been developing these little Toylanders, and it really gives them something to do, something to look after as well, and it's good. Tiny little 2-stroke engine, I think it's about 110cc engine, built in 1946, a DOT milk float, and now owned by Alan Hibbard from Trowbridge in Wiltshire.